Hey, my name's Ali. I play in Australia as the Hack, and I wanted to show you how to set up Unreal Tournament 4. I haven't wiped my settings I was going to, but there's a couple of reasons why. Um, so I'm just going to talk you through the basics, going through this settings menu one by one. So all this stuff is whatever. It's pretty obvious. These two things are some things that could be slightly distracting because they kind of add movement into your field of view. So I didn't know I actually had them on, so I'm going to turn them off and see how that works. Field of view 120. This is a personal preference, but I actually think it's also related to the size of your monitor. So for example, if you have a 27 inch or above, it's probably better to have 120. Otherwise, number one, it's just taking advantage of the extra space, so you can see more on the sides. And number two, if you have a smaller screen, let's say a 22 inch, you might want to go to 110, just so that the things on that screen are not too small when they're further away. So yeah, I'd say, like, for example, a 19 inch, I'd have it on like 105, 2022, maybe 110. If you like to see if you like a more narrower field of view, you could use up to, say, 110 on a 27 inch. I think the default is 100, which I think is crazily narrow for a field of view. So you may want to be turning this up to, I'd say, at least 110. But this is a personal preference, really. Well, it's all personal preference, but actually, I don't think I've ever been to this menu before. I've never seen a toast while I'm online, so whatever. Okay, weapon settings is a tough one. I'm going to leave that to last. So we're going to go to HUD settings. This is not the default. By default, you have a arc that appears in the center of your screen around your crosshair that displays your armor and health. I don't find it adds too much. I'm very used to seeing my armor and health figures down the bottom here, so I turn that off. Damage dealt indicator. It's like when you hit somebody, you see the value of that damage that you caused. Yeah. I don't know why this is turned off. Anyway, yeah, scale and opacity of the HUD. So the arc is try the arc. It's kind of handy. I personally don't need it. So there you go. So here we go, we're getting to some system settings is kind of where you'll set the game so it works and isn't kind of broken. So there's a few important things in here. Playing in full screen will always give you the best, the least lag, input lag, display lag. Using no VSync is probably also good. If you have like a 60 hertz monitor, the tearing may be too bad, but if you use VSync on a 60 hertz monitor, it's going to be extremely laggy unless you run this at, say, 120 and do something like skip GPU buffering, which gets rid of another frame, which is like 16 milliseconds. But if you were on a 60 hertz monitor, I would probably suggest leaving this off, turning this to 61. So it updates the frame just before the display refreshes. Yeah. Most people play on low, simply because it's a demanding game. I usually play on low or medium, or I switch it around. If I want to see pretty things, I'll put it on high or epic even. I've got a 1060 in this computer, and it can run this on medium or high for most maps at 116. So if you're using, by the way, just to refresh rate, if you're using if it's not this is not a G-Sync monitor. I also don't want to use VSync. So a great way to kind of get a smooth experience, and the least amount of input lag is to have this at 1 frame above your refresh rate. Audio has some kind of yeah, simple stuff here, but you also have the voice chat things. I leave it on, but I turn my microphone off so I can just turn it on when I want to. It also means I can hear other people who have it on. Not many people use it at the moment. The game's kind of quiet. If you had more team games, I'm guessing it would be more used. This is kind of handy if you have a really bad GPU or computer. It can help make the game a little bit playable. You can keep your regular resolution for your monitor, but the in-game resolution can be altered. So, that's Quake 1. And that's, yeah. This skip GPU buffering option is a little bit, you may have good results with it, you may not, depending on your setup. Some people find it introduces kind of stuttering or makes it really sluggish. It makes it, it's supposed to basically reduce a frame, like your GPU has a buffer of 2 or 3 frames, and it'll use that buffer if it can't keep up with the always putting on the most recent frame. So in theory, yeah, you're gonna wipe off some number of milliseconds of lag, but in practice, it doesn't really make much difference, or sometimes what difference it does make is actually negative. So from time to time, I've turned it on and felt like, oh, I can hit things now. But sometimes when I turn it off, I feel it's better. So I'm really not sure. Yeah. Okay. Let's go down to control settings, because there's a few things here. Let's just start off with mouse. Mouse smoothing is probably a bad idea. So is mouse acceleration. You can get used to anything. So if you have them on and you're playing with them and you're used to it, there's no reason you can't do something someone else could. But if you don't have a preference, I suggest turning it off, because that means when you're aiming, it's just going to be based on how far you move the mouse. Whereas if you turn these mouse acceleration on, it's going to be based on how far, but also how fast you move the mouse. So it's going to be more difficult for you to develop kind of motor skills, I guess. And maybe harder to be accurate. This is personal preference, but general advice is to leave mouse acceleration off. This mouse sensitivity is also, it depends on your mouse, what DPI your mouse runs at. I forget what mine is. It's FK2 on blue. I think that makes it 800 or something, or 1000. I don't know. But the thing is, basically, I suggest kind of going for a 20 centimeter arc for a 360 turn. So if you get into the game with mouse acceleration off, start at a point and then just move your mouse to the left until you come back to the same point. That a kind of average figure would be 20 centimeters. I mean, I played for a long time on 5, and it was very difficult to aim at anything. Of course, moving around was kind of, well, when you get down to that low, it's also hard to move around. But basically, the rules of thumb is that if you have a kind of low centimeter per 360, it's kind of more of an advantage for moving around, because you don't have to move your mouse as far to turn. However, for aiming, and I guess tracking, it's easier with a higher centimeter figure per 360. So, a lot of people play up to 40 or above. I think 20 is a great middle ground. A lot of aiming is lazy aiming as well, so you're just kind of waiting for people to come across your crosshair. So yeah, I think you maybe try 20. So experiment between 1 and 2 for this figure. Start off at maybe 1.5 and see how that goes, depending on your mouse. Okie dokie. So yeah, acceleration off. Here we go. These are quite important things. So old school UT is double tap to dodge, and that's it. There's no wall dodging except in 2004 and after. But UT4 has a few convenient things. I guess to assist people getting into dodging, because it's a key movement mechanic in the game. Single movement Q tap wall dodge. Oh, what a phrase. So basically, when you're jumping and you're near a wall, if you press left or right, depending on what direction is off the wall, that tap will enable a dodge off the wall. The thing is with this, it's actually not instant. There's like a lag between tapping it and dodging. It's kind of, it might be intuitive if you get used to using it, but I prefer not to use it, and I'll use something else, and I'll explain that here. Single tap wall dodge, only have to jump. Okay, same kind of thing as that. Single tap wall dodge. Okay, so all these things can be, let me just go to the control settings. So we got keyboard. See this one tap dodge? This kind of replaces one tap wall dodge, normal dodging, so dodging left, right, forwards and back, and all that stuff in that other menu can be replaced with this one tap dodge, which basically is a button you press that dodges in whatever direction you're pressing the directional keys, or whichever direction you're moving or pressing. It's going to dodge in that direction, or it'll dodge forward by default as well. So this is extremely handy, especially for new players who are not really good at using double tap dodge. So that is why I do not use, well, I do have this enabled, and actually sometimes it causes me to dodge by mistake, but it is sometimes easier to do a double tap dodge for whatever reason. So you do a slide. ut4 has a slide, which is pretty handy, and it's very handy to have that. I find it nice to have that on the same key as crouch, because it just simplifies things, I guess. Alright, so let's go to keyboard. Actually, first we are going to have to go to weapon settings. Setting weapons up on keys in Unreal Tournament 4 is needlessly complicated. You have weapon groups. 1, 2. Oh my god, why are they? It's weird. 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, you have however many weapon groups. So if you want to have one weapon on each key, you need to have a weapon group for one weapon, which is basically what I've got here. I mean, I've chucked the Redeemer in with the Enforcer. I've chucked the grenade launcher in with the bio rifle, because they're kind of similar. Not different enough to give them their own key. Well, they're very different, but I mean, the use cases are similar. Yeah, I don't know why these, it's probably different mods I've used over the time. Anyway, only one of these is the real minigun. I think it's this one. So I have every weapon on its own key, basically. Ooh, what is that? I don't know what that is, but anyway. So that's Translocator. So you set up the weapons in a group. You can also set up your crosshair, by the way, just while we're here. Just while we're here also. Weapon switch on pickup. This is, yeah, it's handy for beginners, but not really. I don't know. I'd turn it off, and it's good to turn that off and get used to choosing your weapons more deliberately, because you need a different weapon for a different situation, and it's silly to just use whatever you've just run across recently. Because now you have to keep your weapons on the screen. There's no hidden weapons, so I find it's useful to just all weapons use the same crosshair, because you can easily see what weapon you've got out. I've never used custom weapon crosshairs, so I guess that means just not the default. While we're here, this weapon position, it's how high they are on the screen, because you can't hide them. A lot of people choose very low. I guess I don't really care, so I chose lowered, because I like to enjoy the experience a little bit as well. It's just a compromise, I guess. Okay, so now back to weapons and setting up the controls for switching. So one weapon on each group. I mean, for a long time I played with similar weapons on a group, so I had flat cannon and rocket launcher in one group, and I had them on the same key. I think it's probably a good idea to just start off with them all on their own key, just because it's just a better habit to be into. Okay, so now we're going to control settings, and we're going to see down here, weapon group 1 has a key. weapon group 2 has a key, so on. I found mouse wheel is actually good. Okay, let me just start with the movement keys. Okay, all right. So WASD is the movement, the normal movement key setup. But I like EDSF because it gives me a few keys on the left side of the movement keys to use to set up weapons. So I've got A, W, Q, free to put a weapon on. So I have like sniper on A. W is what? I forget what that is. Shock maybe. If I was in game, I'd remember it. I think it's shock. Yeah, so I have everything around the movement keys, not on the numbers, which is the default. So basically, and I also use the mouse wheel up and down for the two finishing weapons, Link and Mini. Taunts and everything else are really, nothing else is really important. Torque is important. I have to move that to Y because I use too many keys for weapons, but that's fine. It's just moved over by 1. Tab is kind of important if you want to see how much you're losing by. Translocator is important for CTF, and I like to have translocator on. I guess most gaming mouses have at least 2 mouse buttons on the side, so one for dodge is good for me because all the movement things on the mouse, and translocator for the other one. It's also good because when you're using translocator you can chain in dodges as well, which makes that easier. But yeah. Okay, so anything else important here? Let me just scroll through and have a look. So I don't use these. M is important if you're playing team deathmatch, which no one really plays anymore, but yeah, it's good to at least know what that is. Every weapon on their own key. You can have 2 keys for a weapon, but I don't think that's really necessary. Okay. So this is... okay, yep. So there's a bunch of stuff here. Request rally is important for Blitz. I'm not a Blitz player, so I'm not really sure how that works, but that may be a key that's important. Okay, so we've been through that. Let me just see if I've covered anything. If you haven't assigned, it just warns you, but yeah. Okay. I think we've set everything up then. Yep, so I hope that's a good overview for you. I'm going to make another video on basic use of the weapons and how that works. Cheers!